Sales, marketing, and RevOps. It's sink or swim out there, and yesterday's strategies and tactics won't help you today. This is Revenue Today, and I'm your host, Jared Robin. Join me as we interview revenue leaders in our community to learn what steps we could take right now to help you scale yourself and your company. Revenue Today is sponsored by RevGenius, and we're on a mission to bring inspiration and creativity to all revenue professionals in the world. Okay. Today's guest is someone I'm looking to learn a lot from. He's a GTM leader with 20 plus years of experience in marketing tech, data science, recruiting, and advertising. He's built high growth companies from the ground up. Some of his many specialties include scaling revenue, identifying product market fit, monetization, growing teams. Recent former president of Metadata, the co-founder of Prop. Welcome, Olivier L'abbé.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Appreciate it.
Couldn't be more happy to have you today. So let's jump right into it. Debunk a myth about generating revenue today.
This is something that I used to believe, but have pretty much changed over the years when I think about things. And my belief was, if you have a good product and you have a really good sales team, you don't need any marketing. And I'm here to tell you that is not true. And we can dive into why my sentiment has changed over the years.
Yeah, tell me, sales drives go to market, no?
I'm a former salesperson. Yeah, for sure. I sold a ton of deals early in my career, and at some of the companies I was at, particularly Paycheck, it was an organization that was, driven by outbound salespeople. They hired outbound people that, were outside salespeople, and they would just own a territory and go to door, and they would go and, the salespeople would do the marketing. So you would basically, build brand recognition in the territory you were given, which was usually a couple of zip codes, and then you would just do the work and close those deals. And after spending the last 8 years in MarTech, I have completely changed that. And I think at the end of the day, marketing is probably more important to scaling revenue efficiently than having really, really good salespeople. Because the way that the salespeople spend their time is critical to the success of the business. After having to manage budgets over the last couple of years and managing huge teams, it's really it's not cost efficient to have salespeople do outbound. And so if you are not generating, if you are a CEO of a company and you are not generating, or marketing is not generating at least 50 to 70% of the pipeline for the business, I think it's going to be really, really expensive to scale efficiently. Because having people that make over 200 grand a year spending time cold calling is probably not the best way to use your money that you've raised.
Well, tell me about what you did at Metadata, because we spoke about how efficient you were early on. Curious to understand that playbook and see if others can duplicate that.
Yeah, so Metadata is a marketing technology that helps automate demand generation. And so you can build demand, right? Or you can basically go ahead and convert on existing demand. That's what like Google ads are great for, because if you're willing to pay for it, you'll show up at the top. People know they have a problem. They go to Google, they put the problem in there, and you'll come up because you're paying to be at the top before the organic results are. And so building demand for your product means that you need to essentially figure out who your ICP is. So who are your ideal customers? What are their personas, right? What jobs do they have? Then you got to figure out, what are their problems? What problems do these individuals have on a day-to-day basis? And once you understand that, then you start creating content. And creating content is not very expensive, and you don't need 20 people creating content. You just have a couple of people doing it. And that's how you can save a lot to your bottom line and create content that will help those individuals, one, get familiar with your brand, and two, if you go ahead and share content that helps them be better at their job, they're going to keep coming back, and you're going to build fans of the product, and eventually when they have that need, they're going to call you. So instead of trying to convince somebody to switch from widget A to widget B, basically start creating content to help and educate the buyers and the personas that you're trying to help at the end of the day. I think that's the most important. And if you want to build a high velocity customer acquisition model, sales reps can't do that by themselves.
So at what point do you need more sales reps, or can marketing just handle this throughout?
Well, some marketing can, right? And so if you look at a company like Jira, they have salespeople. They say they don't have salespeople, but I've had a few meetings with Jira over the years, and it's a PLG motion, and that's product-led growth. And product-led growth is really hot right now. And the reason is that you can get users to start using the product. Think of what Slack was able to do. Right? Slack was essentially a product that you could try, download it for free, and then use it internally on a team. And then once the Slack realized that there was multiple teams using it, then they would send a salesperson to engage with whoever owned the budget for this, and then try to upgrade them on a paid plan. And they would give them a variety of features that are important to the business, whether that be SSO or there'll be analytics or things like that. And so there's a lot of companies now where you can just go to their website and download the product, use it for free, and then once you get to a certain usage, or once you want to incorporate additional team members, they're going to upgrade you. And that is a very effective way to figure out, do I have a product that people want? Because I've talked to tons of companies over the years, and oftentimes somebody will raise some money, come up with a product, and at the end of the day, it's not successful because not enough people want that product. And PLG is a way to figure out pretty early on when your team is pretty small, do people want this? And if they do, that's when you can start scaling and adding salespeople. So you ask about metadata. So, when I came to Metadata, their company probably only had 30 people. There was one seller on the team, 2 BDRs. We didn't have a full-time marketing person. Had lots of engineers. And, the first year, and then in my second year there, we were able to, do 2.5x increase year over year in revenue. And the first year we, and this is when I joined, it was, low single digits, but we were able to essentially more than 2.5x with just 3 salespeople. And the reason is that, our marketing, we eventually got a VP of marketing who's amazing, Jason Widup, but he basically came in and, was able to generate 70% of the pipeline for the sales team. During the first year, given we only had 3 reps, I remember when one of the reps came to me, actually a couple of them came to me and were like, this is too much. I have too many demos. I had never been in a company where I had to go to marketing and be like, can you please slow down? The reps are not able to run efficient calls because they just have too many on their, on their calendar every day, and doing, all the research, before call and entering all the notes after calls and the follow-ups and closing the deal. There was just too much for them. And, that really got me thinking, well, this is a super efficient way to not waste too much money targeting and engaging with those buyers. And we just create, a bunch of long form content, and we would reuse it, use snippets of it. You can leverage, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you could use LinkedIn for free. If you create the content and then, the employees of the company promote it to their networks, that's free advertising. And that's something that I don't think a lot of companies do enough of. Gong, which is, is a great revenue tool, started as call recording, but now they obviously do a bunch more. I mean, they have a really engaging brand as well. They create great content, and that is how I feel like they won the space. And that's because they were able to efficiently find ways to engage with their prospects, share, the learnings from all these call recording. If you're, a data company, you track things like at, Metadata, we track conversions of all campaigns. So we would basically connect to the channels that say you want to advertise on LinkedIn, you want to advertise on Facebook, you want to do some display advertising, you want to advertise on Google. We'd basically be able to, tell you where to spend your money based on all the conversions. And instead of having a human optimize everything manually, right, or outsourcing to an agency, well, the system would do it all, right? Because it would be tied to Salesforce, tied to marketing automation, and you could see all of the conversions across, and then you just spend the money where you're getting the best bang for your buck, which wasn't, a solution that was available a few years ago, but now it is, and now I, realize that having people cold call and do outbound is really not the way to go.
So why did you have two SDRs then? Did you make them inbound SDRs, or how did that look?
Yeah, they were pretty much, they're pretty much inbound SDRs. So SDRs can do a couple of things. One is, engage with people that come to your website, right? And so obviously there's chatbots, and, chatbots are great, but, they're not a real person. And if you want to increase conversions on your website, you should definitely, make sure that a human is behind it. As much as possible, especially if you could figure out that, the IP address of, whoever's on the website is one of the target accounts. That's what we did at Metadata. We switched to a software called Qualified about 6 months ago. And, every rep in the company, if one of their account comes to the website, boom, Qualified will pop up and be like, start engaging with this prospect of yours. And we increased conversion rates on the website by 50%.
So everything was warm. So there was not true cold outbound per se. It was like warm because you showed a level of intent that was probably warmer than download an ebook, right?
Yeah.
Although I'm sure that was probably there too.
That changes over time. When I started Metadata, most people didn't know what Metadata was. And, in my last year, people were like, man, I love your marketing. Right. I'm only talking to you guys because I want to learn from you guys. And if you can create, and obviously we're selling to marketers at Metadata, so it makes sense. But if you can start creating content, and, really get to know the pains of the people that, need your product, and, just share how they can do their job better, that is going to bring them inbound. And the worst thing you could do when you're managing a sales team is having your sales rep trying to convert customers that are not a good fit for the business. Obviously they have to hit their numbers. And I think, with your episode with Mark Roberge, he talked about, salespeople and how the comp plan should be different. And I'm in full agreement there. You land and expand is the most efficient way to scale a business that's going to have high customer satisfaction, because you're not overselling out of the gate. And so similar to what he said, I believe that, you need to set your salespeople up for success. And I think the best way to do that is to motivate them to, be transactional in their first deals, and then stay close to the account, and then get ready for them to be able to upgrade down the road.
Now, you spoke a lot about PLG and how it kind of lends itself to a marketing-led motion. Do you agree with marketing led even away from PLG? Like if you're selling on-prem stuff or something bigger, like is there a point where you're like, what, sales led, and keeping it all in technology, of course.
Yeah. I mean, if your product is under 20 grand, I think you can run PLG, right? All day long. People will buy a $20,000 a year product and put it on the credit card. I don't think that's an issue. If you're selling, Microsoft Azure or AWS, sometimes you'll see some of the size of those contracts. They're talking like billions of dollars, right? Over like 5 or 10 years. You need a human involved there. And if you're selling a piece of technology that is sold to enterprise vendors, where you have to go through legal, you have to go through, security review. If you have to do all these, that's what a salesperson ends up doing once you move up selling like large deals. They won't sell that many deals because each deal is very time consuming, and you have to build a relationship with 20 different individuals of the company. And so that you need salespeople for. I don't think that, there'll be a day where people are spending, $2 million on a piece of software they've never used without talking to anybody. But if your product isn't expensive, I think it's, the best way to go.
And then even if your product is expensive, you can make the argument that this, outbound 2.0 movement is led by marketers.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I've seen over the years that a lot of marketing teams now are owning the BDRs. I think there's some pros and cons there. I think from, the pros is that you have messaging, right? So marketing understands what the ICP is. They're creating content for it. The messaging is on point, right? And so those are all things that are great. Now, if a BDR is really good, then they're most likely going to end up in sales, right? Best BDRs usually will want to go into sales because you can make a lot of money. Some will go into customer success, or they might go into different lines of the business. But at the end of the day, a lot of people that get into be a BDR at a tech company, which is usually an entry level position, is they want to sell big deals. And so that's where I see that there might be more issues down the road. Is one, that BDR is ready to move to the next stage. They haven't built relationship with the sales team or the sales leaders there,
right?
And they'll have to learn sales 101 after doing business development work, which is different, right? It gets you good at doing outbound and talking to people and basically sharing your value prop. But selling, there is so many more complexities to it as to how you build rapport and how you should spend your time. Time management is I think the difference between a good salesperson and a mediocre one is going to be how they spend their time.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny from a company perspective versus a human perspective. Human perspective, you want to align it to sales because you're like, this is our bench. From a company perspective, you want to align it to outcomes. They're all both just trying to get meetings. Like, why don't we optimize on that? These people are trying to bring revenue. Never is somebody bringing meetings the same person, or, I mean, obviously there's exceptions, but right. Like, do you see that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, in marketing has changed over the years. I mean, back in the day, it was like, print advertising, TV. And now, most companies don't do that. And whenever I see a company that's wasting money advertising to the TV, and it's not a product that, everybody knows, like, Salesforce, for example,
Yep.
I don't think it makes sense, because you're wasting impressions with people that don't know anything about your company, and they probably won't even look it up. So you want to make sure you're targeting the right people. And with the capabilities of today's marketing technology, like, you can build, audiences based on who's visiting your website, but then also third-party audiences. And that's something metadata does, is like, I want to look by job title, seniority, location, and you can preview the audience before you spend a single dollar against it. So that means that you're basically only advertising to pre-qualified MQLs. And if they convert, amazing, but you'll know really quickly, because if you use native targeting on LinkedIn, they don't let you preview. Google doesn't let you preview. All the social channels, their job is to make as much money as possible. So they're going to, take your budget and put it as many people as they can. But with the new capabilities have come in marketing in the last couple of years, like, now you can basically not waste your money and only target the right people at the right time based on their behaviors that you have and based on their problems and their personas.
Super interesting. Moving forward, like, what are the KPIs that are important to you today?
KPIs that are important to today. Let's see. NRR is probably number one. Any company, NRR is going to be the most important to the CEO as well as to the whoever's going to lead the next round. Right. And NRR for the listeners is net retention rate. So if somebody gave you $1 last year, how much of that dollar are you going to keep? Right. So if it's not good, it's maybe 50, 60, 70%. If it's great, best in class is usually 150%. That means that you've increased the value of that customer by 50% in 1 year. That is, that's where you want to be. So that's probably the most important metric that I would think about. Followed by percent of your deals sold to your tier 1 and tier 2 accounts. Because what you'll find is that when you do, win-loss analysis, if you put all of your customers into tiers, tier 1 are your best ones, right? They retain, they spend more, B, and then you'll have C and D. Well, when you build your list of target accounts, you should really focus your efforts on just tier 1 and tier 2. Right? Unless your TAM is so small that you have to go after different, companies that are not a good fit. But at the end of the day, again, retention is what's going to give you the biggest multiple on your company when you're raising money or when you're trying to sell your business. And so, make sure that your sales reps are only engaging with, the top of the top, and make sure that your marketing dollars are only going to people at those companies. Third thing I think about is, percent of reps hitting quota. Because if they're not hitting quota, you need to figure out, let's say you have 50%. And now there's sites like, RepView and things like that, which is, geared towards like, people that are in revenue generation, salespeople, CS, and so on. You can see people, it's similar to Glassdoor, but they'll leave reviews and know like what percentage of the team is hitting their number. And if they're not hitting the number, that means that there's some inefficiencies in the business. So maybe they hired too many salespeople, right? Again, it's costly, and so it's unlikely the company will do well. Or two, they're not thinking about inbound versus outbound. They're not investing enough in creating demand, and they're only trying to, jam, deals down, companies that might not be in the market for it. They don't have the pain at the end of the day that's going to help them be more successful.
Awesome. Yeah. All makes total sense. Now, what's been keeping you up at night, if anything?
Right now I'm sleeping pretty well. But
that's because you recently left and you're picking your next move.
I've been out of work for a couple of weeks and I'm sleeping great. But typically, I mean, I think of since I grew up in sales, I think sales, sometimes it's like people think it's like a battlefield, right? So you just leave it all on the field, right? Or like you play football, any analogy you can think of, but basically, give it all. And so by the end of the day, I'm usually pretty tired, and I fall asleep pretty easily and early. But my issues is waking up. Like sometimes when it's the end of a quarter or there's things happening at work, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and 3-4 a.m. and can't get back to sleep, and so I'll just at that time get up. But I have 3 kids, so I got 4-year-old, 9-year-old, 14-year-olds. I want them to be good humans, be able to take care of themselves. And so if there's something that I would think about as keeping me up at night is doing the best that I can as a father to help them, be a good, productive humans on this planet.
I love that. It's so funny because I empathize greatly with your at night play. Like this morning, I was up from 2 to 4 a.m. just and if you get on the phone, you're done. You're done because you're going to see something and it's going to keep you going. I fortunately was able to fall back asleep, but the early mornings is crazy. And then, and that's where my stress has come out as well. But, go on.
And I was going to say, there's an app, there's a bunch of meditation apps. I've been doing meditation for 6-7 years now, and it's really helped me become a better human and not let stress affect me as much, right? I obviously will recognize the stress and then I will move on. But those meditation apps have these meditations you can do once you wake up in the middle of the night, or if you can't fall asleep. I've been using Headspace for years, and so that's a great way to get out of your own head, because you're listening to somebody who has a soothing voice, giving you guidance on what to do from a breathing perspective, and letting everything rest. And so that's probably what I would recommend. If if it's 2 a.m. and you can't fall back asleep, just turn that on 10 minutes and you're going to be like, I'm tired again.
So what's interesting. I practice meditation as well, but I find I take big gaps in between going inwards, and in those gaps the challenges come back. And just sitting with yourself, if you're restless and you're restless for, let's say, greater than 30 minutes or greater than 45 minutes, certainly, just get up and sit, close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, app or not, and sit with yourself, because there's a message to be had. There's a reason, there's something in your subconscious that you need to be with. Mm-hmm. And so be with it. And even if that goes on for 2 hours and you don't fall back asleep, you've been much more productive than you're going to be with yourself, trying to explore that than you would be later on. But anyway, that super fascinating. And as the second half of this, we're gonna learn more about you. So I'm curious to go into that. But before we get into that, what excites you the most about the future? Like right now, you're predicting your future. I mean, you're creating your future, or picking your future, I should say. You're picking your future. What excites you the most about it?
Yeah, and it's something I've been working on for the last few companies I've been at, and that is essentially go-to-market automation. Like I look forward, and this is why I was talking about marketing so much earlier. Is like I look forward to a day where you don't really have to talk to somebody to buy something. And by that I mean is that bring people to your website. You can figure out for the most part who they are, give them the ability to do a self-guided tour. So there's new softwares like Reprise and Walnut that instead of having a salesperson go ahead and give a demo to somebody, which oftentimes people will will not even pay attention to some of those demos and so on. Only let them talk to somebody after they've gone through a certain part of the educating by themselves, right? So they're watching content online, and they'll be part of the community. I think today, if a company is not building a community, they're missing out at the end of the day, because the community is going to be there to get people to be part of something. Right. And so, RevOps, I think, has been an overlooked area as a community, because a lot of, sales software or marketing software will, really make heroes of the people doing the job. But RevOps is a critical part of any company, especially early on. I wish I'd hired excellent RevOps people earlier in my career at some of the places I went at, because they're really going to help you figure out what tuning you should be doing to your sales process based on everything, all the data they have access to. But I look forward to go-to-market automation, where you can basically go 90% of the way through the buying cycle, and depending on how much your contract is worth, then you'll be able to get a salesperson to handle legals and handle procurement and all that stuff. And if it's a low price point, you don't have to talk to somebody. So I think there is not too distant future, software companies are going to be way more effective at generating revenue and making the buyer journey more interesting. Because one of the worst things is when you have to talk to BDR and then you talk to an account executive, you're going over the same questions that were asked, and then there's no transparency between the conversations that were had. And then onboarding comes around and you're still asking the same question, from the CSM, because it's a different person, and none of that intake of information is being able to feed through it. And I think Salesforce is an issue there, but there's some companies now that are trying to solve this. One of them is called Accord, and they're basically, it's part of like mutual success plan, but it's really like your entire buyer journey will now be able to, you can save all the information and then not have a prospect have to answer the same questions by 3 different people.
I love it. What's even worse than everything you described is when you're buying something that you've bought for the last 15 years and you have to go through that. So it's like, I just want to get HubSpot, people. Like, I know exactly what I need. I could teach you about what I need because I put in Salesforce in 15 different places at all 3 levels, worked with their APIs at all of this. And oh my God, I always used to joke, the Salesforce rep told me to Google something once when I asked them a question. I'm like, okay, like let's fine. How can you get there faster? Accord is awesome. Friends with those folks. Doc just came out that's doing something a little similar. Alex over there who ran marketing at Lattice, and the idea of being able to buy faster, like on a website. I don't know if you're familiar with SalesBricks, super cool product. Essentially, you have like your ChargeBee subscription model, like from payments, and you have your like invoicing and be invoiced and pay $100,000 like in one shot model. And they're often separated, and it's like, why? Like, and you can't go to a site and like buy anything that's not subscription. Why? Like, why is this like so fragmented and two different ways here, like with the models. One's ARR, one's MRR. Why isn't it in the same? And you're not going to use Stripe for everything. And the second is, why can't you just get like a quote from a rep and just buy it on the site? And like just quicker GTM stuff is massive. So
and I think the review sites, I worked at G2, and they're going to get to a point where you're not only going to G2 to read reviews and see screenshots of product. You'll be able to use the product and be able to buy, and they want to become a marketplace. And I think that's going to be really, really cool. And there's another, speaking of go-to-market,
can't you buy on GitHub right now? Out of curiosity, like on GitHub, I think you could actually buy like the SaaS world, whatever. GitHub, like way past, like
of course,
crazy.
Yeah. They got owned
Microsoft.
So Microsoft has resellers. Microsoft doesn't really have a sales team, right? Everyone's reselling their product. But another company that is going to, I think, help with this go-to-market automation is called TestBox. They're still pretty early, and they do this for customer support now, and they're rolling out marketing automation. But basically, you can go to their website and you can play with the tools. So let's say you're in a market for 5 customer success or support products. You can go there and play with the tools without having a subscription. And that lets you, it takes it even one step further than, like a Reprise or Walnut, which is self-guided tour, right? So they're guiding you through it. This one, you can just do whatever you want in the tool. They put dummy data in there, but like, it's a really, really cool way to let people just like, do I even want this tool? Because oftentimes you don't get the tool until you paid for it. And, I've bought software over the years and I've been disappointed more than a few times because I didn't have the opportunity to do that.
I just threw a link in the chat from GitHub because I had to test myself. And I'm like, it says set up a plan. We're on github.com for another product. And it guides you through a free plan. And I'm like, is it just linking to their site? And no, it's fully in. And I'm like, okay. So this is exciting stuff.
Circle CI is a great company.
Isn't that cool that it's right in there in GitHub? It's pretty rad. Yeah. But so the first half we learned from you and learned a ton. The second half of this, I want to learn about you. All right. So with that, who are you?
Yeah. That's a big question. I was born in Montreal, born and raised in Montreal. And then when I was 14, my parents decided to move to Texas. I barely spoke English. And so I had to spend 2 years in Austin, freshman year in high school and sophomore year learning English, and I survived. And then we moved to California. I wanted to get into, early in my career, I was always fascinated by the flow of money. And even when I was a kid, I asked my parents, I think I was like 10 years old, I wanted to go to Wall Street. We were in New York. I'm like, I want to see Wall Street. And I've been fascinated. And I still, read books about Rockefeller and things like that, the House of Morgan and so on, because I'm really interested about how the current economic systems came to be. So I went into study economics, went to wealth management, did that for a while, which is banking for rich people, and figured out that wasn't my cup of tea. And then randomly I decided to go into sales, and as a young adult I was actually quite timid and shy. I wasn't the type of person that would go to a networking event and talk to people. That's something that I had to learn as an adult, and it's very uncomfortable. But if you keep doing it, you eventually can power through it, and got to the point where now I kind of enjoy it. But I really had to change as an early adult in my 20s about figure out a skill set that I was passionate about. So when I tried banking, I was like, this is not something I'm passionate about. And so I randomly ended up in selling HR software. And I spent about 5 years at a company called Paycheck, selling software to small business owners. 1 to 20 employee companies for the most part, selling them, payroll and, workers' comp and, benefits and all of these things. And so I got to learn a lot during that time. I I think we were talking earlier about, networking groups. I got really good at talking in front of a group of 50 people because I would go to these business networking international groups where there'd be somebody from all different types of businesses. So you'd have an insurance person, and you have a mortgage person, and then you'd have, a real estate person. You got a banker or so on, and
Personal
everyone.
trainer.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You got somebody that, selling some services. There's only one per, different types of service. And I was a payroll person in that group. And that is probably where I learned the most about being able to get outside my comfort zone so that I could walk into any meeting, or I could walk into on a stage now with, 500 people and feel, not too scared about, my presentation. So that was all really good. And then eventually I fumbled into tech. When I turned 30, I decided, you know what, I've been setting up all of these, payrolls for these, companies, and some of them made it big. And I was like, I should probably go try something else, given I lived in the Bay Area for 25 years. And so I tried it out, and it was a good decision I made.
Paychecks is such a good pathway to sales. And I came from FedEx, which is another perceived commodity, let's call it. If you're in it, you call it perceived. The outside world just calls it straight commodity selling. You knew how to sell value. That's why you did so well. But the outside world just buys it on price, or at least they seem they do it. When you have that type of background where you could sell the same product at the same price to the same person and win the deals, it builds something, right? Like in tech is just like even easier because you have value to
when I left Paycheck and I went to Glassdoor, which was starting out, within the span of 6 months, I was one of the best reps in the company. I had never sold over the phone before because I wore a suit, and
same. You had to.
And went to these meetings, and my closing percentage was like 60% throughout my time there, which is like I ran 5 meetings a week, and then I would close the majority of them, and I got pretty good at it. So when I went to doing sales at Glassdoor, is before Zoom, so you didn't have to do video. When for me, video is probably the most important thing you can do to try to build a relationship with somebody. If you're going to try to sell them something, you should always have your video on. If you're a salesperson listening to this, always have your video. Even if the other person doesn't have their video on, your closing percentage will increase. And companies like Gong have tons of stats on this. Always have your video on. But it really helped me feel really good about the confidence you get when you're closing tons of deals all the time, right? 150 deals a year. Whenever you go somewhere like a tech company, and it's pretty easy because you understand what makes people tick, right? And first thing you need to do is get them to build a relationship of some kind, right? So talking about the weather is not the best way, but sometimes there's not much you can go off of. But if you build that rapport in the beginning, and then you do a needs analysis and be like, tell me about your problems before you talk about the product. If somebody starts a call and says, give me the demo, I'm like, no, you don't get a demo. I don't know anything about you. I'm not going to waste my time giving you a demo. So tell me about your job. Tell me about, your pains, because I'm not going to just be a monkey here and do your demo without you telling me anything about your business.
So yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. I will say that you went to a company that had a brand after leaving Paychecks versus
Glassdoor
was
back
Glassdoor
then. No, 10, 11 years ago. No, I would call people like Glassdoor. I'm like, I don't need any windows. I was like, no. We're a review site for jobs. And, we help people find the right jobs. And people were like, I hate your company. I just went on your website and I hate what you guys are doing. You're creating problems for it. No, it wasn't, my first year there, people didn't know what it was. And if they did, they were like, I don't want to talk to you because you're making my life harder. I got the CEO telling me about these crappy reviews that are left on the website. And I was like, well, how about you participate right now? only the employees that are not happy to participate. How
Yep.
about you think about getting your happy employees to participate? And, by the end of it, I was working companies like, Morgan, Chase. I was working with Facebook and like some huge brands, which was really, really cool. And they bought into it early. Like Facebook was like, oh,
Right.
I'm going to use this as a recruiting tool because, they take pretty good care of their employees overall. And, that gives them an opportunity to show like their lunchroom and to show, all of the benefits that they give and how much people, love working there. And so, and now it's just standard. Everyone knows Glassdoor. Back then, most people I talked to did not like it or never heard of it.
My colleague, right around the same time I went into tech, probably a year after you left Glassdoor, he went in and he's been there ever since. Has had a great career there. It's funny how that works, and that's super cool. So you're in San Francisco or the Bay Area, and you end up in Boulder. What happened? You just wanted oh, really? Was it that recent?
Yeah, it was. So it'll be 2 years next month. It'll be 2 years. So how it happened is that I lived in the city with my wife for, 13 years. And I had promised her that if we got to 3 kids, we would move outside the city. And so we got to 3 kids and then we moved to East Bay, nice town in East Bay. But then COVID hit and it didn't, I didn't like it as much as I like San Francisco. There's blackouts, right? Because there's fires and there's all these issues that were happening and kids are at home. And my wife and I just looked at each other, and this was, August 2 years ago. And there's a bunch of, blackouts and, smoke in the air for weeks at a time. And my wife and I were like, we're out of here. So where should we go? And we're like, I said, well, I heard great things about Boulder. I know I've only been there for lunch once, but I keep hearing great things about it. I like the mountains and I'd like to live somewhere where I could just go snowboarding in the morning and be back home, mountain biking. Quality of life here is outstanding. And so that's the reason. And then I also, like I said, 3 kids, I want them to live somewhere where they can have the freedom to, just bike around and do stuff. That's what I had growing up. And so I wanted my kids to have the ability to have freedom, because if you're in a big city like San Francisco, it's kind of scary as a parent to let your kids go out. And so I wanted them to, be able to have freedom that I had as a kid.
My dad's been an outerwear rep his the last 30 years, Columbia Sportswear, Solomon. I worked in a ski and snowboard shop throughout high school. And nice. I think college in between the gaps when I was coming home. So I know it well. And what's cool about Boulder, in my opinion, as well, is you could build a startup there and get talent that is, I don't want to say good enough, but like good. Like you could build a scalable startup with the talent there
for sure.
In person if you wanted to.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. In the last 20 years, Boulder has really become a tech community. And so is Denver, which is, about 35 minutes away. But, what has happened here, the VC firms have come in. You got, a campus here for Google. You have a campus for Splunk, Microsoft. So there's a lot of companies that have decided to come here over the years because it was cheaper than what San Francisco was. And then there's, the University UC, University of Colorado, Boulder is like 10 blocks from my house. And so there's great engineering talent there. And so it's a really good place to build a business. But the funding that has been available now compared to what was here 20 years ago has really changed.
I love it. I'm so intrigued. And we talked before, I'm going to definitely be back in that area probably in the fall time. But, your passions outside of work, you mentioned snowboarding. Hanging out with the family.
Yeah. I love traveling, love cooking. Thought about being a chef early in my career because I love cooking that much. Love feeding my family. It's probably one of the things I enjoy the most. Just figure out that after reading Anthony Bourdain's book, I'm like, I should probably not go work in kitchens. See if I want quality of life. And so I like golf as well. So I probably played more golf in the last few weeks than I have in the last couple of years, which is really exciting. Yes, it's an activity that I picked up as a young kid. My dad got me into it when I was like 6 years old, and stuck with it. And so that's another thing I enjoy. Love reading, podcasts now. The quality of the podcasts are available now. It's great. You can always learn new things. And I like, it's not as stuffy as, watching a documentary or, television. And so those are things that I enjoy.
Awesome. So yeah, in closing, thank you for coming. How could people find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way to find me would be LinkedIn. And so Olivier L'abbé, you guys can see it. You can ping me there. If you guys let me know you watch podcasts, I will accept your connection requests. Usually I don't accept people I don't know, but if you put that, I do quite a few podcasts. So I build so you can connect with me there. I read Twitter, but I don't really engage on Twitter. So probably not the best way. Don't follow me. You're not going to get much value out of it. But I do work the LinkedIn community pretty effectively.
Awesome. So thank you for coming today. Thank you, Olivia. And
all right, we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys. Yep.
And thank you, audience. If you learned something today or laughed, tell somebody about this podcast. And thank you again, man. It's been another great episode of Revenue Today. Really appreciate you being here. Whoa, another great episode of Revenue Today. For show notes, links, and mentions, visit revenuetoday.live. For all my friends in the Rev Genius community, thank you. It's been awesome to spend this time with you. Please DM me any feedback and ideas in our Slack channel or on LinkedIn. If you're not in Rev Genius, join us at revgenius.com. It's free and it only takes like 2 seconds, and you'll be joining a group of 27,000 revenue professionals strong. We've got it all. Looking forward to seeing you there. Catch you on the flip side.